In this video, we're going to take a look at creating the pin barrel subassembly for the carabiner shuttle pin. And we're going to start off by having an untitled design file and saving that as with a name of the pin barrel subassembly. With that, we're going to go ahead and now be able to bring in our first part, which is going to be the barrel. So I'm going to right click on the barrel and insert it into the current design. And I'll go ahead and say OK. This part we're going to want to make sure is grounded. So I can right click on the component name and choose ground. However, to make sure that it is completely grounded, we will expand and make sure the component name, the singular component, is also grounded. From here I can bring in one of my ink cartridges by inserting it into the current design, and I'm going to assemble it to the barrel utilizing the joint tool. So joint, and then I'm on the rectangular edge here of the ink cartridge right here directly in the center. We have a snap point that I'll click on, and then just to show here on the inside of our groove, so here you got the little ledge there, but on the face of this kind of rectangular lofted part that we did originally in the part file, you're going to see one singular snap point right here directly in the center, and I'm going to click on it to set our ink cartridge right here in this center. Now I am going to apply an offset, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the blue arrow. We do need to offset this by 0.01 just to center it better within the groove. And then I do need to, as far as how far back, you'll notice some of it's sticking out through the top. We are going to go ahead and offset this by a 0.1. You'll notice it's going in the opposite direction when we have a positive value of where we want it to go. So I'm simply going to make that a negative 0.1, and that's going to offset it. Now we don't have that sticking up. And I'm going to go ahead and say OK. We could have this set as a slider joint if we wanted. However, for the purpose of this project, we're just going to go ahead and just keep a rigid joint to keep this into place. We're going to be repeating the same steps, bringing in the next cartridges and the next three, the green, red, and blue cartridges. And so at this point, I'm just going to kind of pause the video. The next step we'll see is you'll see all four of those assembled, and then we'll move on to the next phase of our project. Okay, at this point, we have all four of our ink cartridges in place and jointed to our pin barrel, and now we're ready to bring in the next component. So the next component will be the springs. Before we make any kind of additions to our subassembly, I'm going to go ahead and open up the barrel spring, and the first thing is we need a good place to go through, and I'm going to activate one of the spring end components. We're going to create a joint origin, and with the joint origin I'm going to go ahead and open up. I actually want to set one. Springs can be kind of tricky because you can get joint origins to show up at various places, but really joint origins like nice flat or edges to work from, which a lot of springs don't typically have. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the origin, and I want to go ahead and select the origin point, which would be the very end of the spring, and place my joint origin there. When I do that, it's also going to show up on the opposite end. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the origin planes, but keep the joint origins visible, and I'm going to go ahead and save this file. Once I have it saved, I can close it, and then I'm going to go ahead and insert a spring into my design. In order to get this to work, I'm going to turn off the visibility for the barrel, and I'm going to go ahead and joint. I'm going to go ahead and select, I'm actually going to select the bottom joint, and then I'm going to go ahead and select the ring around the plastic barrel right up against the color selector. I'm going to go ahead and flip this. I can tell because the spring is running into the part. If I flip it, you can see it's no longer running into the part, and if I say OK, now we will have our spring all set up. And I'm going to repeat this same process by inserting 3 more springs and choosing the exact same selections to the other 3 ink cartridges. So I'm going to pause for right now. When we come back, you're going to see that we're going to have all 4 of those constrained, and we'll be ready to put the last part in. All right, at this point, you're going to see now we have 4 springs around the barrels of our ink cartridges, and just to make things a little bit easier, we can go down here to turn off some of the visibility for the joints and for the joint origins, so that way we can definitely see this a little bit better. Not so many icons around the screen, and it can kind of get in the way when we're trying to click different items. I'm going to go ahead and bring the ink cartridge separator into our file. And actually what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring this down below, and I'm going to turn the barrel back on. So the ink cartridge separator will be jointed to, go ahead and select one of the edges here, outside edges, and then I'm going to click on the inside edge of the barrel here. We do need to make a little bit, we do need to flip the direction, and then also we may want to go through and take a look at picking maybe even a better position for our color selector. So you're going to see that didn't really quite work out the way we hoped. So let's go ahead and let's try this again. Maybe I'll click right here in this directly in the center of the selector or the separator, and then I can go ahead and click on the inside of the barrel. There we go. That looks a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and flip this, and probably by the direction, so these are going to be offset by probably a 45-degree angle, so that way we can kind of roughly, just based upon our measurements and everything that have been provided. So this one's kind of been difficult, but most of our color selectors are going to run right down through the center of those holes. I'm going to go ahead and say OK, but we want to make sure that I'm going to go ahead and turn the barrel off here. I'm going to edit this joint again. So the last one in our timeline, I'm going to edit the joint, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this to an offset of about, to bring it right up to the edge of the springs, I've had about 0.69. So you can kind of see where it's about ready to touch those springs. Actually, one of them is running right into, actually the bottoms of them are. So let's go ahead and go 0.68. There we go. Now we got a little bit of separation, and that's exactly where the ink cartridge separator is going to be. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. We can turn our barrel back on, and now we have our main barrel subassembly all assembled and ready to go for our main assembly, which we'll be covering later on in this video series. Make sure you save this, and we are ready to move on to the top portion of our carabiner shuttle pin.